Good evening. Welcome to the Anacortes City Council meeting of May 28th, 2024. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Mr. Franci, I can take the roll, please.
Mr. Fantini.
Here.
Mr. Young.
Here.
Mr. Walters.
Here.
Ms. Clayton McGrath.
Here.
Ms. Moulton.
Here.
Mr. McDougall.
Here.
Ms. Hubick.
Here.
Thank you.
Do you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? All right, great to see a packed house tonight. I've got a few announcements. We're on to announcements and committee reports, so bear with me. I'd like to thank a couple of local community organizations, American Legion Post 13, VFW Post, that's Veterans of Foreign War Post 12220, and the Anacortes Masons Lodge 77 for recognizing Memorial Day and making it a special day. Even though I had to speak at one of them, but Mr. Fantini will vouch that I only shed a few tears, or just my allotment on Monday at Causland. So also thanks to our park staff and the VFW for the continued work they do on that park. Last week we also had a quarterly meeting with the Samish. This is our staff to staff meeting, myself and the chair. And the big takeaways from that were a lot of thanking for the cooperation with the Samish on the cottage housing project, and that we look forward to the next project, which is the Early Learning Center on D Avenue. So again, but the other thing that I wanted to at least get council aware of is that as the Samish Nation continues to bring more land into trust, we'll be working with the Samish, updating our MOU, which essentially in payment in lieu of taxes for that land that goes into trust. So again, this is just a heads up for council that in the coming weeks we'll see that. Also this morning, participated in a regular North Star meeting, and with Ms. Moulton was also there. And I'm on the North Star leadership team, which consists of the 4 city mayors as well as the 3 county council members. But one of the challenges for North Star is communicating with councils as well as the public about some of the good work that's being done there. So a couple of things that have been done. One of them is having council members from each of the respective city councils sit on the advisory group, which Ms. Moulton is on. The second joint, I think it might be the second or third joint all city council meetings with the North Star group that's planned coming up in the next couple weeks. The website northstarskagit.org is now live, so there's some good information there. So again, all about trying to communicate that work. And before I let Ms. Moulton chime in on anything takeaways for that meeting, one of the things to remember, that one of the things that came out of North Star, that whether we communicated this well or not, was funding for the stabilization center. That was a council priority. In fact, I think it was top of our list, council, that all the North Star membership worked towards getting the additional funding to add, I think, 32 beds to a crisis stabilization center that I think we all agree is well, crisis relief stabilization center. So that got why that's important now, that got contracted last week for that happening. Ms. Moulton, anything to add on the North Star?
Yes. Thank you for appointing me, Mayor Miller, so I can attend those meetings. It was great to be with other city council members, and one of the county commissioners was there, and also providers from around the county. And the conversations that you have, even separate from the agenda, are so illuminating what other cities are doing, and just that kind of connection is so, so important. And I really feel like this North Star initiative is really genuinely making that happen, and bringing these groups together and trying to have some coherence and collaboration amongst all these entities that can be so doing the same things in these different little areas. So I was very heartened and energized by the meeting and the level of energy there, and I'm looking forward to more to come. Oh, one thing also is that Volunteers of America has received funding to do development in Burlington which it's not Anacortes, but it will serve a lot of people who need permanent supportive housing. And I can't remember if it's 40 or 54 units that will be built in Bellingham, in Burlington, but that will be a great help in addition to the Crisis Stabilization Center, which will have, I think, 48 beds total. So there's a lot of work being done, funding is coming through, and so good news on that front. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, a couple more announcements. So the City of Anacortes launched an online budget survey. Thanks to the council for providing the constructive feedback. The last survey we did like this was in 2015, and to help just provide at least some feedback on the 2016 budget. So we're going to take a look at this survey. So members of the public can participate in the city's 2025 budget development process by participating in this survey. Preliminary data will be shared with the at the Mayor, Council, and Director retreat. This survey will remain open until further notice as we go through the budget process. Residents are encouraged to share their opinions about what they believe the city priorities should be. Survey aims to obtain broad citizen inputs to assist the mayor, city council, and staff in developing the city's 2025 budget and spending priorities. The survey helps the city understand what community members believe some budget priorities should be at a very high level. An online survey is available on our website at www.anacortes.gov and takes approximately 10 minutes to complete. Those with limited access to computer or smartphone may visit the Anacortes Public Library to utilize public computers to access the survey. We'll continue to share survey results and seek public comment during the entire City Council meeting process as we develop the budget. There will be a community action ribbon cutting Wednesday. I think that's tomorrow at 3:30. So that should be great. Waterfront Festival kicks off this weekend at Cap Santa Marina. Don't miss out. Quick and dirty boat race, live music, children's boat building, delicious food offerings. There are still opportunities to volunteer, so please contact the Chamber of Commerce if you wish to help out with these festivities. And last but certainly not least, congrats to Anacortes High School and some of their great sports teams. Baseball had a great season, wrapped up playing in the semifinals in Bellingham. The Anacortes boys track and field are our 2A state champions, so that's pretty exciting. And football kick practice starts this week, so we're hoping for a repeat of state champs there, so go Hawks. All right, I think that's all I have, and I will go to Fiber Committee report.
Mayor Miller.
Mr. McDougall.
Fiber Committee met actually earlier today. It was Ms. Hubick and myself, Ms. Shu, Mr. Limburg, and Mr. Hoagland as well. And really quickly on the numbers, we are just shy of 2,400 customers on net. And basically in each of the sort of geographic sort of regions that the project has kind of proceeded through, we're at greater than 50% take rate in all but the EDA, and the EDA is at 46% take rate. So, we're looking at essentially, within probably the next 6 months, we'll be at above 50% citywide, which is fantastic. The department itself, they've been working on doing a replacement of our upstream internet router. This will provide the ability to actually be greater redundancy as well as greater bandwidth. It's been a significant sort of planning exercise because we do have to, it's a maintenance window that has to take place. And so we want to make sure that everything is very double checked and ready to go so that basically minimize disruption. And it'll be in the evening, probably, late in the evening at some point later in June. On the construction end, Summit X work is underway in the EDA grant geography. So trenching and boring happening in the Stitwood neighborhood and actually Creekside boring, and then hitting aerial in various parts of the area where it can be done. The next sort of that big EDA space, the next sort of neighborhood where the focus is going to be is actually the St. Mary's sort of neighborhood, where construction will be taking place, and that's largely to get ahead of, there's going to be a bunch of street resurfacing happening in that area in a few months. So, get in, get the trenching done, get the fiber done in front of that. That way, when the resurfacing goes through, we don't have to, we're not trenching through new resurfacing, essentially. EDA, the federal grant has started doing some disbursements, so we're getting reimbursed for some of that construction. I missed the number, but basically it's something along the lines of $600K has been reimbursed to us. And another key note I wanted to mention that now I'm lost it in my notes. Basically the revenue forecast is actually, so the revenue actuals are coming in at just above the revenue forecast for like the first quarter of the year. And so, basically we came in at like 1.3% above forecast, which, really good point here that the team made was that essentially the forecast is really accurately projecting sort of, new customers coming online as well as, say, cancellation requests from folks moving out of town. So that's also really nice to have like, this predictable model that seems to be like operating really well in line with what we're seeing. And that's what I've got.
Okay.
Mis-
Thank you. Any questions there? All right. Next up is Housing Affordability and Community Services Report.
Mayor Miller.
Ms. Moulton.
The HACS committee met last Wednesday at 9 a.m. It was council members Cleland McGrath and myself with planning director John Coleman and Stephanie Snyder also in attendance, and then various people attended online as well. We spoke of the land capacity analysis that was developed by our consultants as part of our comprehensive plan update. And that's necessary to determine how we accommodate the people that are projected to come to Anacortes, our population growth, how that's projected, how our employment numbers are projected, and do we have the land and the zoning to accommodate those expectations? And the expectation is that yes, we do have the land to accommodate that as it is currently zoned, which means it won't be necessary for us to extend our urban growth area or do any major changing in our zoning to accommodate that, although that's not to say we won't do any zoning changes. But that was good to know, and we will do a deeper dive into that land capacity analysis at our June 10th council meeting. It was the Planning Commission did a deep dive into it, I believe, last week, and then we'll do that here for everyone as well. We had updates from some local service providers. Community Action is chugging along, and as Mayor Miller mentioned, the ribbon cutting is tomorrow. They're working on a voucher program for people in need with vouchers from Safeway for food, hygiene, and gas that have some pretty strict requirements to make sure that they're going to the people who truly need them. That's not in place yet, but they're working on it. Also with some vouchers from the Seroptimists, which is fantastic. Very generous of the Seroptimists for clothing and small household items, things like that. So that will be coming. It's not there yet, but I wanted to share it because it's really exciting. They're still doing energy assistance appointments through June, and particularly for seniors. That's who has shown up in great numbers for energy assistance to pay their utility bills. And we talked about people who are maybe not signed up for our utility discount program at the city. And so that information is available, of course, here at the city, but also now at Community Action, so people could have access to that information. I have a piece of bad news. Salvation Army's rental assistance has run out, so they no longer have that to provide. But I have really good news from the Anacortes Family Center. It turns out that the Department of Commerce ended up with some extra money somehow, and for the whole state there was $750,000 available, and the Family Center applied and was awarded $200,000. so, oh, sorry, we're not supposed to clap, I forgot, but it's so exciting. And all the money is going to go directly to client assistance. And one of the reasons that is because the city has been so supportive of the Anacortes Family Center with helping pay for the community outreach specialists, that when the Family Center applied for the funds, that was really in their favor, that they get so much support from the city. I think it's $60,000 a year we give them for staffing. So anyway, it's just great news for motel vouchers, and yeah, nice to end on that note.
All right, any questions? All right, next up, Planning Committee.
Thank you, Mayor Miller.
Ms. Cleveland McGrath.
And just to follow up on that, Director Dustin Johnson did include a little bit more information that these rooms, they've actually identified 5 rooms, so they will be available year-round for folks who may need it. And these are rooms that are for households that either don't qualify for a conventional AFC program or on the waiting list to get in. So we've got, there's a single person, younger person finishing high school that will utilize one of these rooms. There's another gentleman who is on hospice and just doesn't have any family or support that's using one of these rooms too. So these are real people in our community that will directly benefit immediately. But I am here for Planning Committee, which we had right before City Council this meeting, and it included Ms. Moulton, Mr. Coleman, Ms. Grage, and then also we had Commissioner Mills with us today, which was great. We really just went over the public participation plan that was introduced last week that is on the agenda, so I won't go into too much detail about it, but has a little bit more, goes into a little more detail of how Council and Planning Commission will be involved. The main thing that I will highlight, which I'm sure Mr. Coleman will again, is that we are extending the docketing for amendments to the comprehensive plan. We have not done yet this last year, so it's going to be extended for 2024 through the end of June. So June 31st, if you have any amendments you would like to propose, you need to have them in by June 31st. And then nothing will be included through 2025 because we're going to be working on the comprehensive plan update. So it's kind of put on pause until 2026 docket. So if you have anything in the back of your mind, make sure to get it in the next 30 days. The other thing, we will be having a hearing about the docketing in July. The date is not set yet, but we will be inviting the Planning Commission to be there too. So if you guys are interested, please come. And that's going to be our opportunity for Council to actually maybe talk about our goals and kind of vision for the comprehensive plan, and have our opportunity to have a public discussion on those goals. We talked a little bit about the Climate Policy Advisory Team, not a committee, and there's not a lot of guidance yet, but stay tuned. If you've got expertise in that, we're going to need to have a good team in place, because that is a new component of our comprehensive plan that is required by the Department of Commerce, and we're still learning what that will all entail. And then finally, we talked a little bit about Habitat for Humanity. They've come back with a new site proposal that includes 3 cottage houses, and so the next step is they would go through a development review, but in line with our last meeting of 3 units and common open space and whatnot. So that is it.
All right, thank you. Any questions? All right, next up is the Museum Committee.
Mayor Miller.
Mr. Fantini.
So the museum committee met last Wednesday. It was myself, Councilmember Hubick, and Museum Director Brett Lunsford. We took a little bit of a field trip, and we had our meeting at the W.T. Preston, which I don't think I have been in since 1989 when they had the haunted ship. It's changed quite a bit since then. It looks a lot fresher. Now the museum team has done a great job with that location. We spent a lot of time talking, touring the ship, of course. If we got up to the top deck where there was a great view of the new RV park, and it was a super cool view. We can see it all. Now the landscaping is done, and so that's great because that'll be opening in the middle of June for reservations. So that's was kind of exciting to see. We also talked a little bit about the area directly surrounding the Preston and how the new event center would affect it, some possible areas for improvement that also probably bleed over into the Parks Committee. But all in all, it was great to be on that Preston again. And if people have not stopped by and seen it lately, I will tell you, it is definitely worth a visit. There's a lot of great history there, and we're really lucky to have something like that in Anacortes.
You. Questions? All right, Parks and Recreation Committee.
Mayor Miller.
Ms. Hubick.
Thank you. Parks met last week. Mr. McDougall, Mr. Young, and myself were there. We got a fantastic update on all of the different Parks Department from staff. There is some money coming in as a pass-through from FEMA and the Department of Ecology to help with the study of Whistle Lake, to help staff understand how to construct or maintain the dam in a very safe way. We will be seeing a contract soon, and there will be more information available with the focus being on the hydrology of the lake itself. Staff is also trying to do some work on the Heart Lake plan from 2010 to make sure that it's updated to match current numbers, to match shoreline plans, and to just match basic current best science. Staff is also applying for a grant worth about $1 million, and if that grant comes through, there are plans to fix the parking lot, to convert about half of it to a gravel parking lot, and then the other half would be a space with native plants. So the idea is to make sure that we can separate the cars and the people from the natural environment, have a better boat launch, maybe a small float, so some ideas are still being floated around. The parking lot itself hopefully would be designed to better mitigate runoff and stormwater. They're thinking of putting up a swale to help that water filter out. We will also see a school interlocal coming soon. This has been mentioned a couple of times, but the school anticipates that we will be getting a bill for about $7,000 a year. There used to be an understanding to where we would trade locations and facilities, and the school is in a fiscal pinch. So we'll see that soon. Parks Department has assured council that this is affordable. Senior Center has had a lot of really good stuff happening. We heard about the fundraiser that was mentioned last week, and there is going to be an encore show on June 6th, which is also already sold out. There's also a bake sale coming up, a ukulele ensemble coming in from Canada. There's a family music jubilee coming in on July 19th, plus a paleontology class coming up in July with real fossils coming in from Seattle. The parks teams are cleaning up a ton of places right now, so you've probably seen people out there with the mowers. We've had a very, very rainy spring, so just have some patience. It doesn't make any sense to mow when it's wet like this, but they've been doing a lot of work. The hope was that Coslin's been updated. I haven't driven past there, but it was supposed to get mowed over the weekend. And then they are also working on an MOU with the Rotary for the Lookout project on Camp Sante. So council should see this soon. And they are also working with the Samish for a sign project on the top of Mount Erie. So making sure that we share the story of the people who were here before we were. And also doing work on the research around the Tommy Thompson Trail. So just a real quick reminder that everything is still in the very, very early stages. This is all research, this is all science. So keep in mind that the trail itself will need to be temporarily closed for a few days over the summer. We will make sure to get word out to the public and just keep an eye out for signs that are up. So if there's a sign up that says, please don't enter, there's scientific research happening. And that's about it.
All right, thank you. Yes, and I have heard from members of the public. We'll get to the grass cutting as soon as we can at various locations around the city. Any questions? Okay, 3F is Information Technology Committee.
Mayor Miller.
Mr. McDougall.
Yeah, the IT committee met earlier today as well. It was Ms. Hubick, myself, and Ms. Shu and Mr. Cervantes, director, or our head of IT. We covered several topics, the big one being that the Anacortes law.gov domain name change is going to be happening later in June. So this is, we're converting over from cityofanacortes.org to like a more like sort of like the more straightforward anacorteswa.gov domain name. So there's a lot of moving parts to this. This is why it's another piece of work that requires some careful planning. There's a lot of stuff that touches that domain name, and so obviously beyond just kind of the website and the email addresses. So that is coming. Another one that the team is working on is converting basically all city staff to be able to use multi-factor authentication. So this is, you connect into the network or some tool on the network, and you have not only just a password, but also like some other, like an agent piece of software that prompts you to like fit in a code or something like that. So MFA, multi-factor authentication, is definitely like best practice as far as cybersecurity practices are concerned. And speaking of cybersecurity, excuse me, the WCIA provides like cyber insurance policies to to cities that are participating, and Anacortes got bumped up to kind of the tier one of insurance coverage recently and it's sort of justified by the response that we provided to all of the their insurance company the underwriting data, basically following best practices, continuing to do like working with like partners and consultants on keeping us up to date, like basically we're considered sort of lower risk entity. So out of 170 members of the WCIA, only 12 members have that actual coverage. So we're in a nice spot there. And that's what I've got.
Any questions for IT committee? Okay, we're on to item 3G. This is Anacortes Pride poster. It's a presentation, and I appreciate your patience. As you can see, we got a lot of work going on in the committees and on staff. But with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Young, I believe. Mr. Young.
Thank you, Mayor Miller. Really, when you try to think of what do we say about our city and our people, what do we say about people who love, what do we say about the contribution of the many to our world? And when I began to think about that and thought how humbled and honored I am to sit up here with all of these people and to also be your public servant, I'm humbled and I'm honored. I am here because of the shoulders of many that have stood before me, that have been in the trenches, that have fought incredibly hard, that have shed blood, that have fought in all wars, that have organized in the faith community, that have been in existence for thousands of years with two spirits in Native American culture. We are your brothers, your sisters, your family, your friend, and we contribute to this society with our hearts and with our money and with our backs and our energy. I am just glad that we have a community that can support pride. And the reason why it's so important for some that may not quite always understand why it's important that we recognize people who have traditionally been on the margins, that have never really felt that they could be up front and legitimately be themselves with their own right to love. That's what this is about. We live in a society sometimes now in all its beauty and great things that we give to our world, but that still challenges some with threat, with their right to love, to be, to have families, to marry. I wear so many hats when I think of all of you and the people I love. My spouse is German-Irish. We've been together 32 years. I am a person of color. I'm also someone that's LGBTQ+. I grew up in segregation. I lived through that. I have friends across the spectrum with so many views. I come from parents, a father that served in the war, family that's died in the war and shed their blood, people that have organized. I'm here because of Bayard Ruskin, who organized the March on Washington for Civil Rights. I'm here because of Alan Turing, who broke the Enigma code because that was what we needed as a country. I'm here because of Eleanor Roosevelt's relationship with Mary McLeod Bethune. I'm just saying we're all are here. We've always been here. We're just acknowledging our right to stand and be with you. And we're asking you to join us. So I'm so proud of the organization of Pride here in Anacortes that organically pulled it together. All of the people that have supported it, regardless of where you are on the spectrum, the religious leaders that believe that love is the most important thing that we can do as a society. Just imagine if we had a little bit more love, our willingness to consider the other side, our determination to stand when we know something is wrong. What is happening in this community and with the presentation of this Pride poster, we continue that right and that strive to get there. I am so thankful for all of you and for even the people whom have struggled against us for this very right. Because what you do for me is you remind me why I am on the forefront with all of you organizing to make it possible for all of us, including you, to be free. So at this point, I welcome you guys to turn it back over to the mayor. I guess he's got protocol, but we got a presentation of the poster coming up.
I thought that council would want to have a picture,
Okay.
and if you want to bring the poster up, we can all come around to the front of the podium and do a presentation and pictures.
Thank you so much for having
Oh,
us.
yeah, sorry I didn't even give, please.
Okay, sorry.
And as usual, you do have to state your name and city
Yes.
for the record.
Natalie Clark, resident of Anacortes.
Thank you.
I'm also board chair of Anacortes Pride. I'm here with our parade chair, Sid Blasey. Blasey, sorry. I was going to say it wrong. Blasey. Yeah, okay, said it right. We are so grateful to the city for the support and the partnership. It's been a delight the last 3 years, and we really appreciate the members of the city that have struggled with us to make these amazing events happen. It is our passion, and it is how we contribute to this fantastic city that some of us have chosen as home, and some of us were lucky enough to be born here. But yes, on that note, we would like to present this gorgeous poster designed by a local artist to the city, commemorating the 3rd annual Anacortes Pride. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
And we're Sid Blasey, Anacortes. We are switching to the 3rd weekend this year of June. Some people may have noticed the date on that because the 2nd weekend is high school graduation, and we had many students who weren't able to participate the way they wanted to, and families. So who should I have a poster
I
to?
thought at one point you were going to mention a date, the 22nd of, yeah, 'cause it's
June
on the- it's on
22nd,
the
11 a.m. is the parade, with a celebration in Cosland Park following until 3 p.m. And it's free.
Okay, so thank you for that, and you do not have to stay for the 2.5 hours of predicted council meeting to go. All right, any other announcements or committee reports I may have missed? Okay, we are on to item 4, which is public comment. And council, you should have received 2 written public comments, Janet Andrews and William Turner. If you did not, let me know. I've got 2 other folks signed up for public comment, so I always go to those who sign up first. And I have Richard Walker signed up. So this is not, again, an opportunity to address the council on anything that is not on our agenda tonight. We do have a public hearing and a resolution on the public participation plan. But Richard Walker, Deer in Our Roadways. And if you could.
Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, my name is Richard Walker. I live in Anacortes. Another dead fawn at Oaks Avenue near Latitude Circle. Another motorist who continued on his or her own way, leaving the lifeless body in the roadway and at risk of being run over again and again. In this case, though, motorists driving by the scene saw the mother licking its fawn, trying to get it up and out of the roadway and away from the vehicles going by. The driver of the vehicle that struck the fawn had to have seen it, and its mother, unless the driver's eyes were not on the road. It was midday. The fawn and its mother were crossing in a northerly direction, and the vehicle was heading west. As my wife Molly and I approached the scene, the doe let out a heart-wrenching bawl. I'd never heard that kind of thing before from a deer. I picked up its dead offspring and placed it on the grass and called 911 so the appropriate responder could be dispatched to the scene. This experience sickened and saddened me. It sickens and saddens me because all human and animal life is sacred and has a purpose. It also sickens and saddens me and worries me because it's not an uncommon occurrence in Anacortes. I removed a dead fawn from the roadway there around May 8th and again on May 12th. In September, a motorist struck a doe there and left her for dead on the side of the road, but she was still alive. She struggled to breathe for 50 minutes before an officer was able to respond, determine the deer's injuries were mortal, and end its misery. Earlier that year, 2023, I removed a large dead raccoon from the roadway at 11th and Commercial. It was a sickening sight. Blood smears in the road, a fist-sized glob of coagulating blood, the inhumanity of a motorist who didn't stop. That same month, I removed a cat from the roadway at 12th and N. Its lifeless body was still warm. My wife and I once stopped our car at 12th for a duck and ducklings crossing the road. A car drove around us and almost struck those ducks. I'm running out of time. I just wanted to say that the animals with which we share Anacortes deserve our caution when we're driving, and they deserve humane treatment if they're injured. I urge the City Council to, 1, designate 12th Street, Oak Street as a wildlife corridor, and approve wildlife signage on 12th Street and Oaks Avenue. Not more signage, but better signage. Post periodic law enforcement patrols. If I had time, I'd tell you about the ticket I got there. I use, and it woke me up, how easy it is to speed, to drive over the speed limit. The officer was great, by the way. I use cruise control now. Some people need a wake-up. Post-periodic law enforcement patrol, publish a reminder in A-Town magazine about the presence of wildlife on our streets. I hope the City Council will provide the necessary leadership on this issue to help us all drive the speed limit, keep our eyes on the road, and watch out for all creatures, great and small. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Please, so I will say we do not do applause here, especially for public comment. It's really important to respect the speaker, believe it or not, even because you might not agree with something the speaker says. So we don't do applause during public comment. Mary Jo McCardle, did you want to say anything? I think did you want to wait till the public participation plan? Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. Why don't you just come on up? Yeah, you can during the discussion. Okay, thank you. Anybody else wish to address the council on anything not on our agenda? And okay, we will move on to our consent agenda, items A and B. Council.
Mayor Miller,
Mr. Young.
I move we approve the consent agenda items A and B.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Young, a second by Ms. Hubick to approve consent agenda items A and B. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, we're on to item 6. Item 6A is a public hearing. This is a public hearing with regards to the Community Development Block Grant, CDBG 2024 Action Plan. This is a discussion item only, as we'll have the public hearing remain open. And Ms. Snyder has got it.
Thank you, Mayor. Hello, Council. We have a PowerPoint tonight to show the recommendations on how to spend our CDBG grant. And I'm opening that now. Bear with me. 2 weeks ago, Council approved making an amendment to the 5-year consolidated plan that began in 2023 through 2027, so we could make 2 changes, bringing old remainder of funds forward into this action plan, and also making 1 change to add accessibility for disabled persons. And so with that in place, now we can move on to our action plan to put it together. These are the recommendations we have come up with. The grant funding applications received in 2024, we opened up an application period for funding from March 26th to April 15th. The city received 3 application requests for 2024 CDBG funding. The 3 requests totaled $140,941.85. The Family Center, Anacortes Family Center, requested 15% of the grant allocation to support public services. The Salvation Army is asking for $25,000 to repair and replace the flooring in the food pantry and install permanent shelving in the food pantry. The Anacortes Housing Authority is asking for $100,000 to remove and replace roofing, gutters, fascia, and caps at Site 2, which is 14 units. On May 7th, 2024, CDBG allocations from HUD were announced for the entire country. The city of Anacortes will be allotted $106,279 for the 2024 funding year. Our 2024 year is from July 1st to June 30th, 2025. So our total funds that we have to work with this year, bringing forth 2021 funds and 2022 funds, adding them to the 2024 funds, which are the blue font in the bubbles, add up to $157,747, and our recommended spending for those funds are in the orange bubbles. Those are the curb cuts for the disabled access at 24th and H to help folks that are not able with mobility to get to the public transit. The next we are recommending is the $25,000 floor repair and replacement and permanent shelving for the Salvation Army. The 15% for public services for AFC, $15,942. Exterior maintenance for the Anacortes Family Center temporary shelter housing needs exterior maintenance badly, so $17,649 to help maintain that building. And roof removal, replacement, fascia, gutters, and caps at the Anacortes Housing Authority for $65,337. And that's what we're recommending for our action plan. Here are the funds that are unspent for the last 4 years. The 21 and 22 funds have been added to our 5-year consolidated plan as resources, so we could bring those forth. All of the 2023 unspent funds are fully assigned to a project under contract with the Housing Authority. It's just taking a little bit longer to get the project done before we can actually spend the money. And the new 2024 funding has been allocated this month by HUD. We are planning on funding the 2024 grant to all of the 3 applications that came into the city this year. The allocated funds These are the remaining balances balanced to fund the projects, which will align with the Anacortes CDBG 5-year consolidated plan, and it also aligns with the HUD's national objectives. And we evaluate the impact when we take in these applications on how many people we can serve with this money. So the Salvation Army Community Food Pantry is serving 80 families per week. They need the flooring because of safety and a better shopping experience for their clients and volunteers. The shelving is needed because the bags of Client Choice Food Pantry, which there's a lot of those bags that come in every week, they have to put them on the floor. They don't have shelving for those, so our folks are having to come and get their food off the floor. So we're gonna put some shelving in there. Anacortes Housing Authority Site 2 is 4 buildings, 14 units, and it serves 42 individuals. And the Anacortes Family Center, we have 2 projects with them, 15% of the annual allocation, which helps their staffing, and it serves approximately 197 individuals from 79 households on average. And the exterior maintenance project shelters an average of 62 households and 161 individuals each year, including children. City accessibility. The sidewalk curb cuts are a part of what we brought forth on the amendment for our 5-year plan. They're necessary at the corners of 24th and H. This will assist the mobility challenged people, and our project is estimated to cost approximately $78,000, and 43% of that will be funded with CDBG, $33,819. And here is the Anacortes Family Center website and what they do, helping families hand in hand just go through case management and rent ready and helping them build life skills to get back on their feet. The Salvation Army is doing their best, and those are a picture of those bags in the upper right corner that are having to be on the floor, helping to feed the hungry. And then here's the Anacortes Housing Authority, and we're working with 2 different sites, Site 1 and Site 2, doing new roofs to preserve low-income housing or low-cost housing. And this is our CDBG team. Matt Miller, the mayor, is our signer and our responsible entity for Anacortes. John Coleman, my supervisor, is the PCED director. And Heiko Miles is our finance lead, and I'm the PCED coordinator. And if you'd like to keep in touch with the CDBG grant, we have a page on the website. Link is down below, and you can always reach out to me, and I can update you on where we're at. Thank you.
Thank you. So before I turn it over to council, this is a public hearing, and I'll ask if any member of the public wishes to make any comments here tonight. Yep, come on up. And again, this will be open at least through next week, if not longer. So, and state your name and city, please.
Mary Jo McCardle, Anacortes. I have a question. Does it really cost $78,000 to make a curb cut? One curb cut? Or are we doing the whole intersection of 24th and H? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member of the public wish to comment? Again, we can also take written comments, I'm sure, on this one. All right, council, questions, comments?
Mayor Miller?
Ms. Moulton.
Thank you. Thank you for your excellent presentation, Ms. Snyder. It was very informative and pleasing to the eye and multifaceted. I really appreciate how you shared that information. I think it was very clear, and I think it all looks great. So thanks for all your work on that.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Young.
Thank you. Ms. Snyder, it's just, I do have a question. No, thank you very much. I agree with my colleague over here. It was an excellent presentation, as usual.
Thank you.
My question, I guess, more pertains to, I think it's a great use of money. It's really more about community action. Does community action have, in the future, opportunities to be part of this? Or if they were to make application or whatever that, they need to do in order that, I just noticed that they weren't part of that and they probably didn't make application, but they're also new to the work here in Anacortes in our area. And so I just was curious about that.
Right, and we do publish in the newspaper that we have a 3-week opening for taking in the applications for any of our care partners, nonprofits that can put in applications to do it. We only got the 3 this year, and I do reach out and send emails out to everybody that the time is open in case they don't read the newspaper too.
I know you're very thorough. I do know
Thank
that.
you.
I was just curious about it.
I
I
just
didn't know,
didn't
so
see
maybe that's
anything,
something to
yeah.
reach out to community action to, because all of the services that we provide here in Anacortes is needed. Never enough. I mean, it's just the need is so great. So those
Yes.
warriors, we want them out and as knowledgeable as possible. So
Right.
thank you very much for answering.
But just to be honest, they have been funded in the past with CDBG, and the
Okay.
Salvation Army hasn't been funded since 2019. So I
Wow.
guess it just depends on the needs when things
Okay.
come in. So,
Thank you very much. You've answered my
You're
question.
welcome.
Mayor Miller.
Mr. Walters.
Community Action in the past received the 15% services allocation, and then we took that allocation and started giving it to the Family Center. If we continue to give it to the Family Center, there isn't money available in the CDBG allocation for Community Action because the services amount is limited to 15% of the total, and AFC is receiving all of it. Let me keep going. But it doesn't really matter because we're funding Community Action with general revenue, we're funding AFC with general revenue, so, I mean, each of them are getting other pots of money, and CDBG is the least desirable pot of money because of all the strings and reporting requirements associated with it.
It's heavily regulated and a lot of paperwork to get that money.
Yeah. So my question about this proposed allocation for 2024, though, is if the Housing Authority needs whatever it was, $100,000 to replace those roofs, and we're providing them 50 or whatever your numbers were on the screen there.
65. Yeah.
65. Where will they get, or will they be able to get the remaining chunk in order to do that work?
In talking with the director of Anacortes Housing Authority, Sandy Cox, they do get other grants from other sources, state and federal, so that they can make up the difference. So
Assumedly, they haven't identified those yet.
I can't answer that question.
How much time would they have to spend this money, assuming they need to go and get other grants?
Well, we would hope that they would spend it by June 2025, the end of June next year.
Okay. I would just wonder if that is feasible or not, and what the likelihood. A project that costs X and you only fund at 50% of X probably ends up costing more as a result of not having all of the money required to do the project.
I know that they do program income and rental income and a lot of grants, and I'm not sure where all the funds come from, but they seem confident that they could make it work.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Young?
Yes, I just sort of wanted to comment back with Mr. Walters. We agree on so much, and there are occasionally things that we don't. But at the end of the day, the reason I brought that question up was simply about trying to find out if community action could have access to that particular money and if there was a reason associated with it. And I appreciate your answer that you gave, because it sort of gave the details that we needed, that there are other pots of money, general fund money, that everybody use. But, again, my question when I ask those questions are really more about the particular circumstance and asking about that money, although I do appreciate the history, I do. But I want to be clear that sometimes when I'm asking that question, I'm asking for a different circumstance, and I appreciate your answer, but occasionally when you give an answer, I would love to have a chance to rebuttal, because I may have additional questions for you, because you bring with you a wealth of knowledge to the table, and I just want to ask some additional questions from you. So, is that okay?
I will always try to make sure everybody has an opportunity to speak.
I know you
on
do that, but that was directed to Mr. Walters directly.
All right. Well, Mr. Walters,
Feel free to cross-examine, I guess.
Yeah, okay. All right. Okay.
Thank you.
Mayor Miller.
Mr. Fantini.
Sorry. Quick question. On one of the graphs that you showed, it kind of, it showed the like the amounts that we get each year. And in one year there was like 22,000. One year there was like 34,000. But one year there was like 104,000. How did so? What would that increase come from? Like, why That's a big jump. I mean, it's great for us.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and open that up one more
Sorry.
time. So no problem. I just wanted to make sure that you could see it and understand it. What the city has been receiving is usually $104,000 per year. And what we had in those couple of bubbles that I think we're talking about were
show you when you get to
remainder
it.
of funds that didn't get spent in 2021 and 2022.
Aha.
So those were left over. And so when we were here 2 weeks ago and we had 2 public hearings to amend the 5-year plan, it was to pull those funds forward so we could actually spend them instead of lose them and it would go back to HUD. So on those years, 2022, Anacortes received $104,537. We had done the landing for AFCU, the Child Care Center, some soft costs like appliances and things. And in 2021, the leftover funds was $33,819, which had always been earmarked for these curb cuts. It just took a lot longer, and I've been here a year. So my predecessor had kind of started that with Public Works, and I'm here finishing that work. And it just took a lot of regulation to pull the money forward to follow the 5-year plan, which is HUD's ultimate rule. We have to put the framework of our annual action plans supporting our 5-year plan.
That was super helpful. Thank you.
Oh, sure.
All right, any other questions? Okay, like I mentioned, this public hearing will remain open, and thank you, Ms.
You're
Snyder.
welcome.
All right, next up is item 7, other business, and item 7A is appeal of shoreline substantial development permit. And Ms. Swetnam will kick it off, and this is a quasi-judicial hearing, so I'll have some administrative tasks to do that Ms. Swetnam will make sure that I get correct.
Thank you, Mayor Miller, members of council, members of the audience. So I get to first introduce this project and provide council with background on what the procedural history has been and what the process will be for the hearing tonight. So that's what we're going to start with. So this is an appeal filed by Ashland Chichester, I hope I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, of Shoreline Substantial Development Permit number 2024001, which was granted by the Planning Commission to the Port of Anacortes. So we'll go through the procedural history, process for the hearing, and then the applicable rules and regulations. So procedurally, sorry, that's a lot of text on that slide, but the port applied for a shoreline substantial development permit to install fiber conduit in the North Basin area of Cap Sandy Marina from the pier at JKL Docks with the West Basin at a junction box at the Central Pier by the Harbor Master's office. That application was submitted in February of 2023. The port served as lead agency for State Environmental Policy Act review for this project, and they determined in December of 2023 that the project is categorically exempt from SEPA because it is utility infrastructure. And we'll go into the details of that during the discussion of the appeal. The Planning Commission held a public hearing as required by the code on the permit application on April 24th of 2024. After the close of the public hearing and at the same meeting, the Planning Commission approved the port's application and granted the permit. Mr. Chichester was the only party other than the applicant to provide comment during the application process, and he submitted a timely appeal on May 8th. So the process for tonight's hearing is governed by Municipal Code at section 1920.030, provides the process for a Type 3 Planning Commission decision, which is appealable to the City Council. This is a shoreline substantial development permit with an overall value of less than $1 million and a footprint of less than 3 acres, and so this is the type of permit process that we go through. And the appeal is a closed record appeal. From the code, we know that closed record appeal includes participation by the applicant and any appellant, as well as the city. Facts outside the record are not allowed other than the arguments on the appeal. The standard of review for you all as you're reviewing this appeal is whether the decision of the Planning Commission was clearly erroneous. The burden of proof is on the appellant to demonstrate that there was clear error made by the Planning Commission. And the additional process that the mayor alluded to is that swearing in will be required for any witness, including city staff. Council, as an option, can continue this closed record appeal hearing to a later date if additional information is required. So hearing procedures tonight. So first of all, staff will be introducing the project appeal and standards. That's what's happening right now. The mayor is going to then go through appearance of fairness doctrine discussion because this is a quasi-judicial matter and swear the parties in. Mr. Chichester will then be provided an opportunity to present his appeal. The port, if they would like to, are able to respond then to that appeal. City staff will then respond to Mr. Chichester's appeal. He will then have a brief rebuttal, and then council has an opportunity to ask questions and deliberate and hopefully make a decision. So options for council in response to this appeal. Option one is to grant the appeal, which would be to either, I suppose, vacate the decision or remand the matter back to the Planning Commission with direction to consider additional issues. Option two would be to deny the appeal. Option three would be to continue the hearing for additional information or deliberation. So the applicable rules and regulations, again, we talked about the fact that this is a type 3 Planning Commission decision as a shoreline substantial development permit for a project less than $1 million, less than 3 acres, with a local appeal available to City Council. Closed record appeal hearing is the box on the right. Participation, as we said, is the applicant, appellant. No facts allowed outside the record with a clearly erroneous standard of review. So the standard of review, what does clearly erroneous mean? In order for the council to find that the Planning Commission's decision was clearly erroneous, council must be left with the firm and definite conviction that a mistake has been made. Burden of proof, again, is on the appellant, Mr. Chichester, to demonstrate that a clear error was made. So again, these are the options: grant the appeal, deny the appeal, or continue the hearing for additional information. Staff's strong recommendation tonight is that City Council deny the appeal, and we're happy to talk about the details of that recommendation when we get to the argument portion of this. But before, those are kind of all of the introductory comments that I have, but I wanted to find out if council has any procedural or process questions before we turn it over to the mayor.
Mayor Merlin.
Mr. Walters.
Well, first of all, on one of your initial slides, you indicated the application under appeal was submitted in 2023.
I think that was a mistake. I noticed that too.
Okay, great. You kept reading it,
yeah,
but
sorry,
yeah.
no.
Okay,
after,
so the record.
After I said it out loud, I thought, nah, that's an old date.
So this was, the record indicates the application was submitted January 8th, 2024.
Yeah,
Does
that's correct.
that sound right?
That's correct.
Okay, everybody's in agreement on that.
Thank you for that.
All right, so then the next question is, based on the packet and the pleadings, it seems evident that the appellant did not actually submit a complete appeal form. The form is apparently 2 pages, and the second page, which includes the signature and the request for relief, was not included.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm happy to address that. I did put that in the briefing, and we don't have in our local appellate rules any kind of motions practice where we could bring a preliminary motion to dismiss the appeal, but I do think that that's a threshold issue. The code at section 1920-180 is very clear that for an appellant to appeal a matter, they have to include requested relief. They also have to sign the appeal to state that the contents are, to the best of their understanding, correct and accurate. I think that's an important threshold issue for a couple of reasons. One, that code language was adopted in 2019, and it's very clear that that's a mandatory element of any appeal. Two, the reason why those things are requirements in the code is to allow the land use process and appeals to move through the process quickly so applicants can continue to move forward with their projects. But three, and maybe most importantly, satisfying those appeal requirements are what confers jurisdiction on City Council to make a decision on the appeal. So if council is interested in making a decision on this appeal based on the fact that the appeal itself was defective, I recommend and support that. I would say that for, I guess, basic due process issues, it would be fair to allow the appellant the opportunity to respond to that. But staff certainly recommends that the appeal was invalid on its face. I just mention one more thing? The appellant did try to email a corrected version of the appeal last Friday, but there is, the appellant submitted his appeal on the last day of the appeal deadline, so the opportunity to provide responsive briefings doesn't extend the timeline for an appellant to meet the requirements in the code, and so we didn't accept that updated appeal because it wasn't timely filed.
So the reason I asked that question is because if someone submits something that they write at the top, appeal, and it comes across the counter, I guess it is to staff's credit that they bring it to us, but I think it's on us to decide this isn't actually an appeal if it doesn't meet the criteria that are laid out in the code. So I would suggest that's the threshold question here. I don't know if we want to do those preliminary matters to swear in witnesses and that kind of thing and hear from the appellant, but I think that we should determine whether this is an appeal or not before proceeding with all the rest of it.
My recommendation would be to provide the appellant an opportunity to respond to that question, just from a kind of a due process standpoint, but I certainly think it's a threshold conversation that council could have before we get into the other two issues on appeal.
So with that, I'll go ahead and just move through the process, and then council can make their decision really at any point. If you're ready for me to do that, Ms. Swetnam. Okay.
Sure.
So so I will have to administer oath to any party that testifies. But prior to administering the oath, I'd like to ask any council member to disclose if they've had any interest in the property or application or own property within 300 feet of the subject application, or if they stand to gain or lose any financial benefit as a result of the outcome of the hearing, or if there's any reason they cannot hear or consider the application in a fair or objective manner, or if they have engaged in any ex parte communication about this application. If any of you must answer yes to any of those questions, please say so now. Okay, no one's answering yes. Thank you. Is there any member of the audience that wishes to challenge any council member's participation on this matter on the appearance of fairness doctrine grounds? Please come forward at this time. Nobody's moving forward. So I will now administer the oath. So at this time, I'd ask each individual who will be participating in this closed record appeal hearing, including the appellant, applicant, and staff, to please stand and raise your right hand. So I've got some port folks that I think, and I've got staff, and Mr. Coleman, are you in on this as well? Possibly. So you get up, so I don't have to do this again. You're gonna get sworn in too. Okay. Do each of you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you're about to give? If so, please answer I do. Okay, please be seated. And I did not see the appellant here. But again, I'll remind all the parties this is a closed record appeal, meaning no new evidence outside record to be introduced. Prior to providing comments, each party must first be recognized by the chair and provide your full name for the record. Please keep your remarks within the time limits, which are 10 minutes for introductory remarks and 5 minutes for appellant rebuttal. So, like I said, I do not see the appellant here. Mr. Walters.
So I think this would be an appropriate time for us to engage in the question of whether or not we actually have an appeal properly filed before us.
That sounds fair to me.
And so I would make the argument we do not, because it's a 2-page form. Page 2 was not completed. Importantly, the second page requires a signature. We didn't receive a signature. Importantly, it requires the appellant to articulate what relief they are seeking, and we didn't have that because that wasn't on page 2 either. So I would suggest that we hear from the appellant on that point if he were here, but he is not. So assumedly has waived his right to participate on that point. And I think that I would move that we ask staff to return to us with a resolution articulating the fact that we do not have a properly filed appeal before us. Thus, there is nothing for us to decide, and the Planning Commission's decision should stand.
Mayor Miller,
Mr. Fantini.
I just have a quick question. You had recommended that we offer, the process question, that we had offered the appellant, is that the right word? Thank you. An opportunity to sign and respond to that. Is that different than what Mr. Walters is suggesting?
No, we weren't. My recommendation was not that we give him an opportunity to correct his appeal, but just that he have an opportunity to respond to the argument that staff made, which he has had an opportunity to do that in briefings, but at the hearing itself, just to speak to that question of the, whether it is in fact a valid appeal or should be dismissed on its face.
Okay, thank you.
I second the motion.
Okay, and to make sure I understand the motion was to remand this from Mr. Walters and second by Ms. Moulton to make the determination that the appeal is not valid. And Mr. Walters, you want to?
Not to remand, but just to have staff bring us a resolution making clear that statement that we don't have a valid appeal in front of us.
Okay, I think I understand that motion. Ms. Swetnam, do you understand that motion? Does it allow, because I think council could also make the motion to deny the appeal as well, and I don't know which one is
No.
cleaner, but.
I think that, if council makes a determination that there wasn't a valid appeal, then that doesn't get into the substance of the appeal itself, nor does it give the appellant then something to appeal through normal shoreline hearings board process. So it makes more sense as a threshold issue. One thing I just wanted to mention is the code section for land use appeals requires that the appellate body issue a written decision on the appeal, supported by written findings and conclusions. And so staff is happy to, since there won't be findings and conclusions, come back with a writing that addresses the fact that the appeal was determined to be invalid on its face and incomplete.
All right, that makes sense to me. And so still a motion by Mr. Walters and a second by Ms. Moulton. And any additional discussion?
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Young?
No, I appreciate the approach. And, honestly, I had a couple of questions about, the real issue beyond the procedural part. And what I was hoping and looking forward to was the conversation about it with the person that made the appeal. So for me, it's disappointing. But at the end of the day, I do think in this case, Mr. Walters makes a good decision. Just kidding. But yeah, no, I'm in agreement. But it would have been wonderful to sort of hear the other side of it, because what I saw was a procedural issue, and I was still trying to get to, in understanding and reading all of the material, what was the undergirding environmental issue when there were a number of steps taken by the port, just some extraordinary stuff. So anyway, in that case, I won't get the satisfaction, and I'm ready to move forward.
Okay, well, you have the opportunity to vote on whether you think it was a valid appeal or not. Sorry.
Mayor Miller?
Mr.
One quick
Fantini.
one. So sorry. So just so that I am very clear, even though we are going to vote on the procedural element, there's no opportunity for this appellate to come back and file another appeal. Their time has passed, so this is essentially a done issue at that point.
Well, they can always, I don't really want to say this out loud, but people can always challenge things in Skagit County Superior Court for various reasons. But the standard process for an appeal of a shoreline substantial development permit is that there's this local appeal by city council, and then from there there's an opportunity to appeal it to the Shoreline Hearings Board. So without a valid appeal, there's not anything for them to appeal because to the next level, because they would not have exhausted their administrative appeals at the local level. So
Okay, thank you.
it kind of forecloses that next step.
Okay, motion by Mr. Walters, second by Ms. Moulton to determine that the appeal was not valid. Mr. Franciac, we take the vote, please.
Mr. Young,
Yes.
Mr. Walters,
Yes.
Ms. Cleland McGrath,
Yes.
Ms. Moulton,
Yes.
Mr. McDougall,
Yes.
Ms. Hubick,
Yes.
Mr. Fantini.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Swetnam, and thank you, council, for your patience on that one. Wanted to make sure we get those correct. All right, next up is item 7B. This is a contract award, water treatment plant, north line repair and flow meter upgrades. And this is a discussion item with possible action. Mr. Rayum is already there.
Yes, I am. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Andy Rayum, Public Works Director. Before you is a new contract with HDR Engineering in the amount of $167,950 to design a permanent repair of a water transmission main and replace 2 flow meters and associated vaults and piping at the water treatment plant. In the winter of 2023, the water transmission main broke and was repaired with a temporary patch to the pipe. In close proximity to where the transmission main broke are 2 flow meters that measure the quantity of water leaving the water treatment plant to the distribution system. The flow meters were scheduled to be replaced in 2027 and included in the 6-year capital facilities plan. The project is also partially funded by FEMA due to a storm qualifying as a disaster in 2021 that is believed to have caused the transmission main to break. But that's all I've got.
Questions for Mr. Rayum? So you've seen the contract.
Mayor Miller?
Ms. Moulton?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rayum. I just had a quick question because we did approve a contract for vaults very recently. How this is for design of, could you just clarify for me a little how it's all related, and is there going to be another contract coming too?
Yeah, so this is the take it to full design for this project. It has 2 vaults that hold the flow meters, as well as the transmission main, which broke, and so we need to replace a bunch of parts there.
Okay.
So you'll see a construction contract awarded, but this is it for the design.
Okay, great. And so I see we have almost $1 million earmarked for the entire project altogether, and so the bulk of that will be for the construction of it, which will be coming up soon.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay. Any?
Mayor Miller.
Ms. Cleland McGrath?
So just to clarify, I believe this is the project that came through, we ran through finance because we're accelerating. It was going to be in 2027. It's going to be this year now. That's
yes,
the same
it was.
project, right?
Yep. Mhm.
Okay. And when we talked about it at the finance committee, we requested that when we have a better understanding of the design work and how much will be covered by FEMA, that you'd come back and let us know
Okay.
for that percentage amount, because it's only on the portion that is affected by that flood, right, for the flood.
Correct.
So yeah, that's my only comment on that. It makes a lot of sense, and our water treatment plant guys can sleep better because it's got a lot of pressure behind this, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, when that broke, it was quite the sight, I understand.
Yeah. So in that case, I move that City Council authorize the mayor to sign contract 24-166-WTR-001 with HDR Engineering, Inc. in the amount of $167,950 for the design of the water treatment plant north transmission main repair and flow meter upgrades.
Second.
Okay, a motion by Ms. Cleland McGrath, second by Ms. Hubick to award the contract as presented. Any additional discussion? Mr. Franciac, vote please.
Mr. Walters,
Yes.
Ms. Cleland McGrath,
Yes.
Ms. Moulton,
Yes.
Mr. McDougall,
Yes.
Ms. Hubick,
Yes.
Mr. Fantini,
Yes.
Mr. Young.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. Next up is item 7C. It's a contract award Marches Point Road Water Main and Bike Lane Project. And Mr. Rayum's still here.
Still here. Before you is a contract in the amount of $589,600 with Kimley Horn and Associates to produce a 60% design to install a 30-inch water main under North Texas Road heading west, then it heads south down Marches Point Road to South Marches Point Road, also known as the Park and Ride. This contract will also produce a 60% design to widen Marches Point Road for a bike lane from the Tommy Thompson Trail to the Park and Ride at South Marches Point Road. The reason for only producing a 60% design with this contract is to stay close to the capital facilities plan budget. There's 2 items, one in parks and one in the water system. And then we also had additional funding that was not budgeted for from Washington Department of Transportation bike and ped grants. We intend to return to City Council in 2025 to take the project to full design and construction later in 2025.
All right, questions for Mr. Am?
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Walters?
What's the price difference going to be between 60% and full design?
It's not a lot, yeah. It's just that we didn't want to spend more than was allocated by the budget.
This one, by the way, would be one that would benefit from a map. But I think that the area that we're talking about is an area that a couple of years ago, we recently did some really minor widening of the shoulder on. Is that right?
In some places, it's a lot more involved. Like there's retaining walls required for some areas of Marches Point Road to have a wide enough area for a bike lane. Don't tell GIS, but I'm going to bring up Google Maps to.
Right, but just a couple of years ago, we did some widening on that road. Maybe
I didn't know about
maybe
that.
2017.
No, that's before Mr. Am's time, and I believe there was work done, but there was no water line as part of it and no overlay.
Mayor Miller?
Ms. Moulton?
Yes, I did see that. A portion of road widening to provide 2 11-foot travel lanes with 4-foot paved shoulders, both sides from the Tommy Thompson Trail south, approximately 0.2 miles, was previously completed under a separate project. So it was just a short little piece of it.
So here's the map. This is North Texas Road right here. So the pipe, there's a Bartholomew. There it is, Bartholomew. So our water transmission main right now currently goes underneath here, and it's not an ideal location. This is actually kind of taken over. I don't know if this was ever a county road, but it's definitely ran by the refineries at this point. There's stuff over our water main throughout it. So we wanted to build a new transmission main that goes along North Texas Road all the way over to Marches Point Road right there. And then down. This is South Marches Point Road, and this is the Park and Ride right here. Am I too zoomed in? Can you guys see it okay?
Mayor Miller?
Ms. Moulton?
I apologize, Mr. Ream. I have a draft email here to you that I didn't send, but I did ask for the map that I didn't send that to you, so I apologize. But I was a little bit curious about the encroachment by the refinery. So did we just give over the city's steel water main and now we need to construct a new one as a result? And I don't know, that's before your time too, but did they just sort of take it over and we're like, okay, you can have it, we'll build the whole new one? I'm just curious.
So we do have an easement for that water. So it's steel and it's very old. I understand that it's broken a few times over time, not since I've been here, but it's broken. So it needs to be, we need to have a different place to transmit water to the refineries. So that's why going up Marches Point Road is a good option for us and gets us out of the refinery. So that road, I can't explain the history of it, but yeah, there's definitely things across that road and parking and all sorts of stuff. If you look at these aerials and kind of scroll down Bartholomew Road, you'll see what I'm talking about.
Okay, so regardless of encroachment, it's something we were going to need to replace, so it's not.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Young?
Just following up on Ms. Moulton's line of question, one of the things that, I was curious about was when in the description, it says it has since been encroached upon and fenced off by the refinery south of in North Texas Road. Have we approached the refinery to see if they want to throw any money in with us? I mean, it mutually benefits both of us, and I would assume that they may have a little bit more resources than we do. And my hope is that maybe if we get some contributions toward it, because I think it really benefits all of us, and I think at the end of the day, they're stakeholders in this process that we're choosing. So I'm hoping that they come to the table as well, and maybe there's a reason they won't, but I think that this benefits them in the city, and there are other places and we may be able to use some of this money if we got any from them. Have we thought about that, or?
So there's a couple of things. One of the good news stories is that they're going to acquire that water main that's underneath Bartholomew, the steel main that needs to be replaced anyways. So we do offload that off of our inventory. It's then the refinery's inventory to replace or repair that main, so that's a huge win for us. The other part too, just so you guys know, the refineries pay into a separate fund, so they have a whole different water cost structure, and then their capital facilities are based on this. In short, they already paid us to build this main down Marches Point Road.
They're a significant contributor to our regional and our regional system. I mean, not only do we sell them the water, of course, we tax the water that we sell them, and they do pay aheads for that allows us to do major projects like that. So to say that I don't think you intended it that way, but to say that they don't contribute contribute to this project would not be correct.
No, you're correct.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that, and I'm acknowledging the fact that they contribute a lot to what makes Anacortes successful: water, sewer, all those things in the infrastructural bid. The question I was really focusing on in lieu of that, because they also benefit from being here and the environment that we provide for them. My question was just about that cost, because, again, in the description it had encroachment. And so, there didn't seem to be a clear explanation for why that took place. I understand it may be defense or just over the years. I totally get that. But it still means that the city owns that piece. And the question is, how do we mitigate that with, water or, using some other lines? So I just simply don't think it's a hurt to ask and to find out if, we get any money, it can be used toward other things that we need here in the city that we're budgeting for. So, that was my question. I'm clear on the other pieces, but the fact that it has been encroached upon and that we are about to now put in a new line to not only mitigate that, but enhance what we're attempting to do. It seems that, for me, in my opinion, that there are two stakeholders. And so my curiosity was about whether or not they would be willing to come to the table. And I would take it that the decision was made not to approach them. Is that correct?
Oh, no, we did. Yeah. So they're going to take over the line that's under Bartholomew Road, the one that we're trying to get our system out of their area, basically. They're going to take over the ownership of that line, and we're moving our line outside.
I got it. So you're saying that them taking over the line, the existing line, is the contribution that they're making.
Well, that
and it's of value and so that the line that you're proposing to put in is, with them taking over that original line, it gives us enough value to spend the money to do the line that we're doing right now that you're talking about, correct?
Correct. Well, there's one other piece. The wholesalers, they have their own capital facilities plan, basically, and their own capital facilities funding. And so they have paid for this line to go down Marches Point Road.
Okay. No, I'm okay, but I wanted to be clear because it wasn't clear at first. It seemed that it was behind a fence that somehow over the years was built up, and so that was city's right of way to do what it needed to do to feed that system. So to change it and we spend the money to change it. My question was more about, their stakeholders in this process as well. And so I was just trying to make sure that the city's money was being used, and if there was an opportunity to get money as a result of this dual need, that we did it. So, okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Motions, perhaps?
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Walters?
Do you know how much Connecting Washington grant funds are part of this project?
That's a really good question. So we're working with State Department of Transportation, but I believe it's 200,000.
Okay.
I need to get back to you on that. I don't know what the exact amount is.
Is that for design or for for design? So of the 600,000 that we're authorizing today, plus whatever it takes to get to go out to bid on this, this would be 200,000 of the Connecting Washington grant funds. That's for the bike lanes.
Correct.
Where do we not? I feel like we have a lot of questions about this one, maybe disproportionate to the number we should have. But where would the bike lanes be constructed that haven't already been constructed as part of that earlier project?
I believe it's on not the water side, but the inland side of the road.
Okay. So we have them on the, has anybody been out there recently?
I haven't been.
We have them on the waterward side at like a 4-foot bike lane.
Ms. Cleveland,
There's bike lanes on the backs, so we need a better map. Correct me if I'm wrong. So there's bike lanes as you go parallel. Okay, that's too close. Go out a little bit. When you go parallel along Highway 20, there's bike lanes there all the way to where you cross the railroad tracks. There is a shoulder going north-south on March Point Road, but I don't think it's like a defined bike lane. There's rocks there. I mean, I haven't had a problem riding my bike there, but it's not as obvious and well-maintained as South March Point Road is. Further east. But I would say it'd be nice to have a map with this.
Yeah,
of where the old line is that we're going to pass back over, and then where our new line will be in relation to the bike lanes, if possible.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Walters.
And connected to that question is where the bike lane project lives in the capital facilities plan. Do you happen to know? I think you'd mentioned that a parks project is part of what's funding this. Do you know which parks project?
I think it says Parks Marches Point Bike Trail.
Well, that would be great if it did say that. I didn't find that. I found miscellaneous bike and pedestrian improvements.
No, it was specific to Marches Point.
And in the parks section?
Yeah.
Mayor Miller?
Ms. Moulton.
I do remember this from Eric Scharback days talking about this, and this has been in the works for a really long time. And my understanding is that it's that ditch on when you're heading northbound, that's on your right, is going to be covered in the bike lane. Partly is going to go there, and it's going to be like a fully legitimate bike lane on both sides on this major connector from the Tommy Thompson Trail to ultimately the casino and beyond. So to me, it's been clearly, I guess to me, it's been clear for a long time that this was going to happen, and it's just a matter of time and funding. So I'm in favor of this.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Young.
Just to be clear, acknowledging what you just said, Ms. Moulton, and I appreciate that. Are we saying that we're sure this is what's going to take place, or are we saying that we think this is what's taking place? I would much prefer to be clear, I appreciate it, and I'm in support of moving this thing forward, but I would love to see what we're talking about. I have no clue beyond what you said, Ms. Moulton, during Eric Scharbeck days. And for me, that doesn't bring clarity to the discussion so that we know what we're absolutely doing. I support this, but when we talk about bike lanes, I would love to see something to know what we are talking about, and I don't have that.
It is a design contract, so that's when you tend to see the bike lanes laid out as part of the design. Am I missing something there?
No, you're right.
No.
Councilmember Moulton did remind me there's a ditch there now. That's where the water main is going to go, as well as the bike lane.
I hear you, Mayor, on the this being a design contract, and that's what we're working on. What I'm asking about, though, sometimes we have drafts, or sometimes you can show us on a map what you're talking about. Those are the things that are absent in this discussion, and those are the things that I think are important, at least for me. I'm one of 7.
No, I agree, they're important, and we should have had a map here, and I can't remember how long it's been since I've ridden down Marsh's Point Road on my bike. I don't think there's a significant enough bike lane. Okay. And this has been a long, I recall there's not one, and this has been a project that's been out there for a long time, although I don't know if we found it in the capital facilities plan, but I'm confident it's there.
Mayor Miller.
Mr. Walters.
Yeah, I cannot find it in the capital facilities plan. In the park section, in transportation, there are definitely projects related to March Point Road, but I don't know that they're this project. So I would like some more clarity on that, whether or not we approve this tonight or not. I would like more clarity. And actually, I think we ought to amend our council procedures to provide that if there is a capital project contract on our agenda, that the agenda cover sheet should identify which CFP projects are funding that project. Because this seems to come up relatively frequently. The project, as described by the Public Works Director, sounds pretty good, but I'm not sure that bike lanes on this section of road would be my top priority versus other locations. And that's why it's important to relate these things back to the capital facilities plan, because that's where we articulate what our priorities are.
Mayor Miller.
Ms. Moulton.
So this is a Connecting Washington grant, and what else was in my email is good job getting those funds. So this would be a Connecting Washington project, obviously, a connector of this type. So there's that. And it says in the contract, new bike lanes will be constructed overlying the March's Point Road trench section. Some low-height retaining walls may be required at the edge of the existing roadway. So, I guess I felt like, for me, this was pretty clear, besides the map we're all asking for. But other than that, I'm not understanding where I guess it's not in the CFP in an obvious way, but I don't have a problem with this. I support this.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Walters.
Well, if money comes from some granting agency to actually build the bike lanes, and that money is available only for this project and only in this location, then that would be great. The point of the capital facilities plan, though, is to articulate our priorities, because what if we wanted to ask for money from a granting agency for some other location? What if this wasn't our top priority? If it was our top priority, we would assumedly have articulated that in our capital facilities plan someplace. That's the reason that it is so important that we link these things back to the capital facilities plan in a clear way.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Fantini.
I just have a question. So it's the March's Point Road water main and bike lane project. So I know we're talking a lot about the bike lanes, but the water main to me is that going to be like the meat of the project, or is it?
Oh yeah.
That's the meat of the project. Yeah. So we see so when it's talking about earmarked funds in here, that there's 2.2 million roughly earmarked for this project. Obviously 2.2 million isn't going to just bike lanes, right? So would I be correct in assuming that maybe the reason why the bike lanes are being identified here is because since we do need to replace this water main and since we do need to have that work done, that it might even be more cost effective for us now to also include the bike lanes in that rather than come back and visit that at a different time?
Absolutely. It's why they're in the same location, so now's the time to do the bike lane.
Because we're going to replace the water, like if we decided we're not putting bike lanes there, we're still going to do the water line, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm in favor of this.
Okay. Mayor Miller.
Mr. Young?
Yeah, thank you. You know, after the discussion, sometimes discussions are good between council to understand different views and, you know, why things are the way that they are. And I think that I'm okay with moving forward. I really am. But again, I just wanted to express the concern that going forward, that's what I would like. And I appreciate you doing the work that you do. I really do. Sometimes there are things that I want to see in order to feel comfortable about it. And in this case, you know, after the discussion, I'm okay with moving forward.
Mayor Miller.
Ms. Cleveland McGrath?
A couple of things. I would say that next time I'd love to see a map whenever this type of stuff comes up, and also see it on the like a reference to the capital facilities, not just for Public Works, but I think for a lot of the projects, it just helps us. If there's some reference on the cover sheet, it helps us reference our brains that aren't doing this full time. So those are my 2 points. The other thing, though, I do want to say is this is an old water line. I agree that that is the biggest portion of this contract, and that the refineries are a wholesale customer of ours. So they also, not only do they have to pay for their water consumption, but they also help pay for the infrastructure and capital projects. So just to kind of comment, to respond to some of the comments and questions we've had, it is expected, and it is calculated, I've learned this on the Finance Committee this year, about that is factored into their yearly costs for water. It's not just the consumption of the water, but also the infrastructure that they utilize as appropriately as for our overall water system. I would also, my final thing is that from Texas, is it Texas Bartholomew to south on that South March Point Road is really scary when you're on your bike, because that's where you see the most traffic going north and south on South March Point Road with all of the large like trucks, semi-trucks and whatnot going really fast, either coming off the highway or going to the highway. So having a more designated spot is, to me, really important. I know a lot of people who bicycle out there go to Mocha Joe's. I would also say that, you know, when you turn and you're starting to go towards the park and ride, because of all of the activity that's been built up there and the number of folks that either go to Mocha Joe's or goes to Deegwalich Center and whatnot, and the number of buses that are now going in and out, having that go around the corner and go east to the park and ride is incredibly important too. So I'm in favor of this project with the comments for future projects.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Fantini?
I also just wanted to point out, I was looking at the capital facilities plan, and I do see under transportation, March Point Road, Trestle, Park and Ride Trail. Is that the same thing, or is that?
Yeah, that's it.
That's it? Because it's on here for $257,000 for this year, which sounds about, okay.
There's one in Parks though, right? I guess maybe there isn't. I'm sorry if there isn't. Okay.
Yeah.
And there's one in water. There should be two March Point projects in the CFP.
Mayor Miller.
Mr. Walters?
Well, that may be where you have gone awry, because there's no project in parks, and it probably doesn't make sense for it to be in parks. It's the one Mr. Fantini pointed out, and the one in water, both in Public Works. That's where they are.
Okay.
Thank goodness.
We weren't rogue spending.
No, try not to.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions or perhaps a motion?
Mayor Miller.
Ms. Moulton.
I move that the city council authorize the mayor to sign contract 24159ENG001 with Kimley Horn and Associates in the amount of $589,600 to perform the 60% design of the Marches Point Road water main and bike lane project.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Moulton, a second by Mr. Fantini to approve the contract as presented. Any additional discussion?
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Walters.
So now that we are able to read the project that Mr. Fantini, the newest member of council, was able to find, it indicates that construction of these bike lanes we think can be accomplished for $250,000. Does that make sense? Is that right? It says permitting, planning, and construction.
Sorry, a lot of the expense is installing the water main.
Right.
So the base course, all that is.
So that's within the
backfill for
realm
water
of
main.
possibility. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, a motion by Ms. Moulton, a second by Mr. Fantini. Mr. Franciac, vote please.
Ms. Cleveland McGrath.
Yes.
Ms. Moulton.
Yes.
Mr. McDougall.
Yes.
Ms. Hubick.
Yes.
Mr. Fantini.
Yes.
Mr. Young.
Yes.
Mr. Walters.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you for the good discussion. On to item 7D, Resolution 3156. This is Public Participation Plan for the 2025 Comprehensive Plan Update. This is a discussion item with possible action, and this is open for public comment. Mr. Coleman.
Good evening, Council, Mayor, members of the public. I'm John Coleman, the Director of the Planning, Community, and Economic Development Department. So at the May 20th council meeting, council reviewed the public participation plan, and I gave a lengthy presentation about what the plan is. So I'm going to forego the explanation of what this plan is and go right into discussing the changes that the council had requested at that last meeting. So earlier, last week, we put together a resolution and a revised public participation plan that was available in the packet over the week. And then as we had some discussions today, we made some further changes to the public participation plan to the last 2 pages, the table of timelines and the chart, the new chart in the back. And I'm going to explain all of the changes. I just wanted to, for accounting purposes, people understand that at sometime after 5 o'clock, we published yet another revised document. So there's a revised document and a further revised document. It's going to be difficult to tell the difference, but I'm going to go through, first I'm going to go through the first pages, and that's going to have all of the revisions that the council wanted to see that you brought to us last week. And then I will go over the revisions that we made today. So all I'm going to do is go through the document here and turn on track changes so we can see what was changed. So the first comment was wasn't entirely clear to the public that we're just revising our 2016 comprehensive plan element. We're not doing major change. We're not throwing anything away and restarting with the caveat that we're creating a brand new brand new climate element, because there never was one, and our transportation element is going to be heavily revised. But this first section is just clarifying that we're starting from 2016's and updating that. So that's the intent of that first part. Moving on to one of the other comments that the council had made was about the docketing process. So at the last meeting, I had mentioned that we had changed the docketing to be through June of 2024, if you wanted to be able to have anything, if anybody in the public wanted to bring something, any requests for amendments in this 2025 update. So I clarified in here that what we've technically done is we've extended the 2024 period from, instead of ending in March of 2024, we've extended that to the end of June 30th in 2024, and put in here very clearly that because this is such a big update, that we're not likely going to accept any, after that date, we're not going to accept any other applications to be put into the 2025. And so what that really means is that the March of 2025 date that we normally will be accepting annual docket items through, those are going to be deferred until the 2026 annual update instead of being included in the 2025 update, because by March of 2025, we'll be 80% of the way through this, hopefully. So it'd be far too late to include anything, any new amendments into that process. So that's the comprehensive plan amendment heading section updates that you see here. Any questions on that? All right. Then some other comments were smaller things like under direct mail, we also included that we could be sending things through the utility billing envelopes. Under news releases, we included the Anacortes American and the Clam Digger as potential places where we could have news releases. We also clarified that A-Town is not quarterly, it's twice a year. And then the next change, sorry, I didn't have that on the screen as I was reviewing those. The next change, we included the farmers market as a possible location of pop-up tabling sites. These were comments that the council had requested that we put in there, so easy enough to throw those in since we were revising it for you. And then under the public meeting and workshops section, we added a section here explaining that the department is just more information about how the Planning Commission is going to be involved in this process, and stating dates that have already happened. Moving on to the table of dates, one of the things that we wanted to be really careful about with this chart here, establishing dates, is we don't, as we go through this process, timelines are going to change. So we didn't want to back ourselves into a corner about specific dates if we were to put anything concretely like going to be in June of 2024 or whatever. So we've built in some leeway in that to allow us to move schedules around a little bit depending on how much progress we've made. So the first sections, we just updated the dates to where we are. You can see under the workshop open house number 1, I've also added that's early engagement. What we're trying to achieve here, and this is speaks to some of the changes that we've made to the document today, is wanted to differentiate between the shaping of the plan and the refining of the plan. I think conceptually, maybe we weren't really clear about what the difference is there. So I'm going to state it now to make it a little bit more clear. So you can see under shaping of the plan, we're talking about early engagement and then draft elements. We've spoken in the past about how the comprehensive plan is going to be built in several, we're going to review it in several elements as we go along. As you can see from this document, we plan on working on the housing element and the land use element first, and then progressing through other elements. Culminating in January is when we're expecting to have our first draft of the climate element. So this whole time we've recognized that the climate element, however that ends up looking, is going to affect all of the other elements potentially. So we're going to work through all of those other elements as the climate elements being developed. And then once that climate element's developed, that's sort of the end of the shaping of the plan. That's when we'll have the first draft of everything else. The refining of the plan, now you can see I've inserted here, it says integrating all of the comp plan elements. So the idea is once we've entered this refining section, then we can look at the climate element and making sure that it's internally consistent with the rest of the comp plan elements, making sure that it's one cohesive document. So that's where we'll be with the refining of the plan. As far as the workshops, we're having on June 5th the early engagement. So we're going to talk about our existing comp plan and sort of general goals for the comp plan update process. Later in sometime September to November, we're going to have another early engagement workshop, sort of a check-in, like after we've got a lot of work done and there's something for people to really review, maybe help people understand, like, okay, I see where we're going with this now. Let's, let me look at it with fresh eyes. This is very different than the 2016 reviews. So it's sort of like a midpoint workshop for people to engage. And then after we have the full draft, the second draft of the comprehensive plan, trying to integrate all of the comp plan elements together, we'll have a second cohesive draft. Then we can have that third workshop where people have almost a done document for them to review. So that's the differentiation between shaping the plan and refining the plan. Are there any comments about that? All right. One other thing that I changed on this, it was pointed out that our Planning Commission meeting work sessions under refining the plan were deleted in the draft that was put out last week. We've reversed that. We will be continuing to have Planning Commission work sessions when we enter the refining the plan stage. So that brings us to this brand new visual preliminary schedule that was put together to address a lot of the comments that the council had last week about how is this going to work. So visually, this is showing we're going to continue outreach from now through April of next year. During the shaping of the plan, we're going to be gathering information, doing analysis on each of the individual elements. We're going to be releasing the draft changes to each of those elements and reviewing them individually or in clusters, like we intended to do the land use element and the housing element at the same time. And then you can see below there, in the Planning Commission, we've identified, and this is different than what the one from earlier this week was showing, we've eliminated those icons on there because we didn't want to imply that like we're going to have like a work session or a public hearing on this specific month. This gives us a little bit of wiggle room, but the intent of the Planning Commission work sessions under shaping the plan is we'll have work sessions and public hearings. We intend to have like a work session for each draft element or just a regular public meeting at the Planning Commission. However we frame it, it'd be a more informal presentation. And then we'll have a second chance with that same element after maybe there might be some refinements done, and bring it back and have a public hearing where then the public can have a more formal opportunity to give comments on each of those. After those public hearings, we're not anticipating the Planning Commission is going to be making any formal recommendations because we know that those elements are going to change once we get to the refining of the plan, but maybe have them say, hey, this is looking pretty good, and then send those to the City Council for check-ins. And so now you can see that other light blue column with check marks. Those are indicating that we intend to be bringing the various clumps of elements or individual elements to the council for a check-in after the Planning Commission has had a work session and a public hearing on each of those. So that'll be an ongoing process from July through hopefully January, not beyond that, but who knows? We're going really fast on this, but it's still a lot of work to do. Speaking to that city council line, you can see in June of this year, there's a check mark. So that's to represent, last week we brought the land capacity analysis to the Planning Commission. They had a really good conversation, and so we intend to bring that land capacity analysis to the city council in June. Not going to be next Monday, but probably June 10th. And I think that was mentioned earlier in the Planning Committee update. Now you see a big green star there also. That's something that is a big meeting. That's the docketing hearing. So that was a big topic of discussion last week. And so we wanted to make it very clear that after that June 30th deadline for the docketing, we'll bring the docket application requests to the city council for their review. We intend to have the Planning Commission attend that meeting also so that they can be present for that conversation and see what the council's thoughts are as the council's reviewing the potential docketing. As I mentioned before, we do have one application for property to be included into the urban growth area, so that'll be a major topic of conversation. There's going to be a lot of policy decisions around that the land capacity analysis is going to drive. And so I'm really anticipating that July docketing hearing is going to cover a wide gamut of city council goals and intents as this comp plan goes ahead. So it'll be sort of a major moment in this process where you'll have hopefully enough information to formulate a good idea of how you can help guide the Planning Commission in their work. So that'll be a big occasion there. At that meeting, we're also had some notes on this, excuse me. Just wanted to say we also recognize that the city council had mentioned that there's some city-owned properties that are not currently in the urban growth area, but are acquired for the purposes of Anacortes community forest lands. So we own them. We'd like to include those in our urban growth area most likely. And so begin the process of discussing that. And just want to make clear that, those lands that are identified as Anacortes forest lands, that's the intent that they would be bringing in as parklands. Those, even though they'll be in the urban growth area, it's not intended for development on those properties. It's intended as Anacortes forest lands. And so we'll be very clear about that. And likely, I suspect that the city council is going to want to ask the county to include those in our urban growth area. There's a lot of there's discussion points around that though, and we'll be doing that at that docketing hearing as well. We did have one request for a rezone of property around the Fidalgo Pool area. That'll also be brought to you. I'm not going to go into detail about that, but I did want to highlight that that July meeting is going to be a big, important meeting for the city council and Planning Commission and the community as a whole as we go through with this process. And then you see further check marks along there. That's as after the Planning Commission's finished their reviews of and had public hearings on each of the elements, then we intend to bring them to the city council and present them to the city council as well.
I did want to acknowledge the fact that Ms. McCordle is waiting here to comment on this. Are you going to want to comment still before we turn it over to council? You're pretty much wrapped up, right, Mr. Coleman?
I can be. I can talk all night if you want.
All right, well, Mr. Walters, I'll recognize you because do you have a specific question about this?
Question on the chart here, and the docketing public hearing that Mr. Coleman, you say occurs in July. Assumedly, then we will execute or we will adopt a docketing resolution indicating which items we want to be included in the comp plan update.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you imagine that that takes place at that check mark, that second check mark, or separate from that?
Well, as long as the council's prepared, you could do it at that docketing hearing. We'll advertise it as a public hearing. If the council wishes it to be a two-meeting process, that's entirely fine too. It's up to your pleasure.
Okay, and I think your point is well taken that addition of the ACFL to the urban growth area is not to grow urban area, but simply to then incorporate them into the city limits.
All right, you're going to wrap it up?
I'm good.
Okay, Ms. McCordle, you signed up a while ago to talk on this subject, so.
Mary Jo McCardle and Anacortes.
And a little bit closer to the microphone. And
I have a question and a request under the communication tools of this plan. I have a real interest in making sure that the broad spectrum of our community gets notification and clearly understands how they can participate in this process. And most of the ways that the communication is proposed incorporates the words shall and will until you get to the direct mail and news releases. And it says that postcards or other informational material may directly be mailed or included in the utility billing envelopes. And then under news releases, it says the same thing. For major topics and decisions, the City of Anacortes may prepare press releases and distribute them through local papers such as the Anacortes American and the Clam Digger. Not everybody reads not everybody accesses the website. I would really like to see and encourage, the language in this document to say that the city shall or will communicate via the utility billing, via the Clam Digger, via the Anacortes American, and will provide other paper material information. That's all.
thank you. All right.
Mayor Miller?
All right,
Oh,
Mr.
sorry, public.
Well, public, I see Mr. Wetcher. Come on up. This is the public participation plan. Is it on? You can make sure it's on.
There we go. Brian Wetcher, Anacortes.
Thank you.
First of all, as a child of the 60s, I'd like to say it was very gratifying to witness that earlier ceremony here. We may have a long ways to go to create an equitable society, but how far we've come gives me hope for the future. And speaking of the future, I'd like to address the process by which comprehensive land use plan amendment requests move forward in this process. First of all, will there be public comment at the docketing hearing? Secondly, once those comprehensive land use plan amendment requests have been docketed, how will they move forward in this process? I see a lot of interviews and a lot of what we used to call dog and pony shows going forward, but I don't see anywhere that those are going to be judged in that process. So is there a winnowing of some of those comp plan requests before we get to the draft document? Will they be incorporated into the draft document, or will they go forward to the Planning Commission intact as individual and external requests, external that is, to the draft document as it moves forward. It seems unclear as to how a comp plan request will actually get to the Planning Commission and be considered intact by the individuals who requested it. And I'd like to see those requests move forward to that draft planning hearing intact. Whether or not the consultant views those as something that they would like to include in the draft, because I do not see anyone other than the consultant participating in the draft. It's indicated that staff may participate in that, but it is not clear that we will be getting a draft document from anyone other than the consultant with staff review. So I would hope that we can address those procedural concerns this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now, council, I know there was a number of comments. Who was, shout out?
Mayor Miller.
Mr. Fantini.
I had two questions. First, Mr. Coleman, thank you for the updates. Appreciate them. The new graph is excellent. It's a lot easier to read than all of the other little single cell ones that were on the other one. This is great. I did have a question because I read the version that came out before this, and I wasn't sure if this was maybe a mistaken omission or if it's something that's incorporated elsewhere in the plan. But at the 5 p.m. revision, not the 5:30 p.m. revision, there was a line item in here for the new element, the Climate Element Policy Advisory Team. They were in there, but I noticed in the new version, they're not in there. So I didn't know if that was maybe just a mistaken deletion when changing some of the, because it said in the earlier version that they were going to be involved from, it looks like, August to January of this year, or if that's incorporated in a different part of the, sorry, hi Libby.
Good evening, Council. Libby Grage, Planning Manager, City of Anacortes. Yes, so the line for the Climate Policy Advisory Team meetings was combined with the shaping of the plan.
I see. Sorry.
Here, so it was combined into that section.
I missed that. Thank you very much. Sorry. And then my second question, in sort of a response to our earlier constituent that mentioned about the changing of the language from shall, or from may to shall, that type of thing. I appreciate that very much. I had asked the question at the last one if we were going to definitely be doing mailings in the utility bills, and I got what I considered to be a pretty definite affirmative response. So I just wanted to follow up. That is something we will be doing.
It's highly likely.
What would deter us?
I don't know necessarily the process of getting something put in. The likely hiccup would be if there was some sort of issue with, like, we're not able to put it in the utility billing. That just, I wasn't clear, as to whether we have the ability to do so.
I think we can, because I know that just recently we put a whole insert in about solar, because I got one in my utility bill that we talked about here at council. So I definitely want to make sure. I do think, from my perspective and short time on council, what I've seen is a lot of the confusion that has come forward from the public has been because they weren't as informed, even though we did a great job last time on the process of putting together the 2016 plan. So I think the more that we can reach out and the more that we can inform as many of our constituents as possible, the better we'll be served as we move forward in years and have to kind of look to that for guidance. So how can we make sure that happens?
Mayor Miller?
I think I'll try to answer that, and that the reason it's not shall, I mean, something could happen with the insert company, or the cost could, go way up. That's why it's not. That's why it's not in there. Clearly, we've done it. It's capable. It's not free. I don't know what the cost is, but that's certainly one very small possibility why it's not a shall. Mr. Walters, I think you were going to chime in on that.
Yeah, I actually do not think that we should rely on the utility bill as a method of communication, and I'll tell you why. Not everybody gets a utility bill. Not everybody gets a paper utility bill. I think that the purpose of doing the utility bill insert is because it's cheap, and if we can do it, let's do it, because it's one more venue. But I tend to think we should do a direct mail piece. I mean, we just did the A-Town magazine, and it's got some information in there, but it's not really tailored to like how you can participate in this effort. Typically, what I've seen is jurisdictions will do a postcard, relatively cheap, maybe a half sheet of paper, but it's got a good amount of information, including the website, because you're not going to put the comprehensive plan on a postcard or even in a letter to people. But some key dates that people can check in or go to an open house, and if those can be scheduled well in advance, that would be a key thing to include there. I would really advocate that. Put it in the utility bill as well, put it in the next A-Town, put it everywhere else that you can, but at least doing one direct mail piece, which should be doable for $10,000 or something like that, or less, I think would be worthwhile. I think Mr. Fantini's point is well taken, except that we won governor's awards for participation in 2016. I mean, this was a very lengthy process with many newspaper articles, and there will always be people who say they didn't understand it or didn't participate in it. That's just baked into the cake. But being able to say we did all these things and tried to get participation and really did get a lot of participation, I think is worthwhile too. So I would advocate that we find a way. I don't know that it necessarily needs to be a requirement in this public participation plan, although that'd be one way of doing it. But I do think we should do one independent direct mail piece to make sure that people are informed, and one being a minimum.
Mayor Miller?
Ms. Moulton.
So I'm looking at that outreach as well, and I think news releases, we're pretty sure we're going to do those, so that should say will or shall. Open houses, we already have one scheduled. I would put will or shall with open house. And for direct mail, I mean, we already are going to do a direct mailing, which is A-Town is our town. What if we'd emblazoned it on the cover? Everyone gets that in their mailbox, and we could save money that way. Postcards come and go, and sometimes they just get chucked in recycling. But if it's on the cover of A-Town, I think that we could sort of, save some resources that way and really get the word out. My other question we brought up in Planning Committee today was work sessions. The Planning Committee is having several, and we talk very often at Council about having work sessions, and we never have, I can't remember having done one in a very long time. So we advocated for a work session for Council, and including consultant participation, which sounds like it might be virtual, but that would still be good. So when we get to a kind of a farther along state, like refining the plan, if we could have a council work session with consultants, that would be fantastic.
Ms. Cleland.
Yeah, I would second. I don't think we've received a paper utility bill in quite some time. But there are some other opportunities beyond just doing direct mailers. I think that the hospital does a publication on a regular basis. They may have a listserv that's available to share this important information. And the school district, we can talk to a couple people. The principal at Fidalgo sends out a weekly email every single Sunday with a flyer in it that includes school-related information and information that's beyond it for the community. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there that doesn't actually cost us any money as long as we make the right connections with them. I know that you included that you'll do presentations, but I also think there's a lot of opportunity for their listservs to get on, either Rotary, Kiwanis, HOAs, real estate companies, because they all have their own listserv and they're used to doing drip marketing. Civic groups, Fidalgo Living, I think would be another option, if they would be willing to do some kind of feature on it. I think we've got to approach as many options as possible in different venues, because it's not exciting until it's next to you, until it's affecting you 3 years later. and it's going up next door to where you thought you knew what your zoning was, and you didn't. So this is a good start, but I hope that you will lean on us as council members to look for other opportunities to get connected with engaged people that may not want to log on to the website and do the notify me button. So I think we need to have like maybe at least three easy forwarding emails that we can provide to, whether it's a quick summary with a QR code, the 2016 plan, easy to see, and when we're going to have those community engagement meetings sooner than later, and make that easy to pass along or at least connect staff with, so that we can get on those groups. I know Act Theater, there's a lot of opportunity, and they're not always on Facebook anymore, and they're not necessarily reading Anacortes American, even though we all should. So please lean on us to find other opportunities.
You definitely have staff's commitment to continued outreach. That is a big goal of ours, and that's stated in this. We're trying to walk a line of not like identifying every opportunity, because they're endless, and we could continue to add every organization that could be involved. So we had to kind of draw a line and keep this a little bit broad, but you definitely have our commitment to broad outreach, and we will take you up on your offer to.
Yeah, that sounded like a request, and we need council to reach out to your constituency, your groups, because you represent a wide range of folks in Anacortes, and to be able to have our staff use you all to communicate that. We need that as well.
So
Ms. Cleland?
So into response to that, then we need to, I don't know if it may be too late to add it here, then we need to know when those like major events are happening, so that we know when to ask for that email, or you do that email forward to us so we can forward it to our people. Because right now we don't have it, and the first meeting's June 5th, and I don't know, that's next week. So it's 8 days from now is our kickoff. And at what point who have we even contacted for our kickoff? That's concerning to me at this point.
So I believe that all of the city council members have been included on the notify me, so you should be getting these notifications. And yeah, if you're willing to forward any notifications that we sent that are sent to you to your own listservs or whomever you think could help get the word out, we would love that help. And just if you do, let us know who you sent it out to, like groups, so we can include it in the list of people, like just so we keep track of saying, we sent it to this listserv or that listserv, in order for us to really show that we are doing broad outreach. So we keep track of those kind of groups, so let us know.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Fantini?
Would it be fair to assume that, like, for instance, I know that it's something that I should get out to people when I walk into a council meeting, I come in through down there and I'll see like a public posting. Like, for instance, there's a public posting on the window down there that talks about the June 5th event. So every time that there's a major event, you have to do some kind of public posting. Is that kind of?
Yeah, anything, yes, definitely public hearings. We put out notice certain number of days ahead of time. Public workshops like this, the whole idea is to get as many people there as possible. So yes, we've been publicizing it in the paper and locally and on the website. And we just have limited access to disseminating so we're doing everything we can. But
And I want to, like Councilmember Cleland McGrath, definitely want to help get that outreach out there. So the way that I would see it right now as I'm looking at this is, for instance, obviously the open houses are big touch points where we want the public and we want their input. Where would you say are other areas that we should be letting people know to come? Because I guess what I would say is there a list of those? Like, if I look at what you gave us here on the orange page, this one, page 7, thank you. the place to do it would be like the workshop, right? Where else would
So
it be good?
each of the 3 workshops, obviously. And then we'll be posting notice of the public hearings, like formal notice of the public hearings. So those are for each of the elements as we review them. So that'll always be a good touch point. The docketing hearing is going to be a big one. And then after, after the climate element and we get into the refining the plan, that's when we'll have another big open house and more public hearings during that process. So, I mean, there's a lot of big.
And then
just about every month there's a big public hearing.
Okay, and then the question would be when because we have months that are kind of listed here. We don't have specific dates. So like, for instance, I've had a lot of people say to me before, hey, can you give me a couple weeks notice before this is coming up? What is the required notice for those? And is it a huge problem to put some more specific dates on the calendar?
It is a huge problem for us to know specific dates because, I mean, we're crunching at the last minute to get stuff to like the Planning Commission on time just to get it published on time. So we're always trying to do so much, but yet still get it out in a timely fashion that it moves very fast for staff. So it's hard to be like, well, that's why we are having such a hard time picking specific dates. I mean, we're committing to the docketing one, and beyond that, yeah, it's really just a matter of, is it, Libby? Number of days between publication, ahead of publication, how many days do we have to have it out for public notice?
Sorry,
we have to
Libby.
check our code.
I'm just curious. I don't know the answer. That's why I was.
Right, and it's in code, and it's.
I believe it's 14.
Oh, so it is 2 weeks. So people would have 2 weeks to kind of.
Correct.
Okay.
Mayor Miller.
Mr. Walters?
The question in all of this, though, is not the minimum requirement, and it's also, I think, not telling people that there's a public hearing on the transportation element of the 2025 comp plan update, because nobody knows what that means. I think that there will need to be much more broad, high-level discussion and socialization of the fact that we are doing a comp plan update, what a comp plan is, what it means to do the update, and what it means to neighborhoods on the ground, potentially. And to some neighborhoods, it may mean nothing. I mean, there may be no impact. To some, there might be some. I don't think, I think to Mr. Coleman's point maybe, I don't think we can prescribe 100% in advance how all of this is going to work. I do think we need as much lead time as possible, whenever that's possible, much more than the requirement. And even here, if we can say, as now we have, that these open houses are going to occur in July and, well, wait a minute, am I reading the 5:30 version or the 5 o'clock? In June and in October, and then next February. I think that that's useful information, even if we don't have a hard date on those yet. So I don't think we need to describe it in really great detail right now. I think I'm comfortable with the resolution and the attachment as has been presented here tonight, including the 5:30 version.
Mayor Miller.
Ms. Ubik.
How is language accessibility being managed, interpretation, translation services for the in-person meetings particularly?
For the workshops, the open houses. I haven't asked that question to the consultant who's doing those meetings. Presumably we'll have the same facilities available that we have for all of our planning commission and city council meetings, which is, of course, the the accessible website and information that is provided, on the council meetings page, and then the in-house assisted AV hearing. And I'm not familiar with what other services are going to be provided for the open houses, though.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Walters.
Also, to address Mr. Wetcher's comment, I think we can figure that out at the time of docketing. His comment was, how does a docketed item move forward? Does it move forward intact, or is it modified in some way? I think it's for us to figure that out at the time of our docketing resolution. We might want to put in options into the draft, or we might want to say, not this, but that, and it's for us to figure out later. I don't think we need to figure it out in this resolution.
Yes, maybe just for the benefit of the people watching from home, the docketing process is just a process of the council deciding whether or not the requests should be studied, and whether or not they're going to be included on the part of the process to, for example, the rezone request. Will the city even consider that? Will the planning commission be taking that up and looking at that further? So it's kind of a yes/no with some direction of, at what scale that the city council will define at the docketing hearing.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Fantini.
I would like to make a motion that we adopt Resolution 3156, approving the public participation plan for the 2025-45 periodic comprehensive plan update.
Second.
All right, simultaneous seconds, but I have a motion by Mr. Fantini and a second by Ms. Hubick to adopt Resolution 3156. Any additional discussion?
Mayor Miller?
Ms. Moulton.
Thank you. I would like to include a work session with council and the consultants before I approve this.
Can we, Mayor Miller?
Mr. Fantini, yes, your motion.
And again, I don't know, so I'm just asking, is there a way that I can motion to approve the plan with the addition of a work session element for council?
Yes.
With the consultants.
Yeah, and the consultant, thank you. So I would like to amend my motion then to make a motion to adopt the Resolution 3156, approving the public participation plan for the 2025-45 periodic comprehensive plan with the inclusion of a work session for council and the consultant.
And are you okay with that, Ms. Hubick, on the second?
Yeah, second.
Okay, I just want to say,
Okay,
Mayor Miller.
okay, Ms. Moulton. I
Okay,
gotta-
so I'm not sure how this works either, but what Mr. Fantini said, but I would also like to specify a general timeline for that, so we do it at the best, most effective possible time, which I am not sure exactly what that is, but it's definitely during the refining the plan period. So that looks to me like it's so planning commission meetings, work sessions,
Spring.
January through March, workshop, open house, January through March. So maybe March through May, because all those things will have happened, so we'll have all that information. So maybe that's April, May, if all those other things are going on through March.
Mayor Miller?
Okay. Mr. Walters.
I think that based on the description here, May of next year or April of next year is pretty late. I'm not sure exactly what your objective is, what Ms. Moulton's objective is, but if it's to direct the direction of the plan, maybe it should occur during one of those check-in meetings that are listed on the check-in line. There are 4 of them, and maybe one of the last 2.
All right. All I know is I've got a motion from Mr. Fantini, a second by Ms. Hubick, and it is to approve the Resolution 3156 with the addition of directing staff, I think, to add an additional council with consultant work session. And did you understand that? Did you understand that, Mr. Coleman?
Mayor Miller?
With a specific, I'm sorry, with a specific date. You were going to remind me about that one.
Yes.
To be determined, can we leave it at that? And we can.
I guess we almost could, but I'm wondering if we do it before the planning commission has their work sessions for refining the plan and before the open house, if we sort of guide the direction then, or we're guided by the things that are happening at those. I mean, does anyone else have any thoughts on this timing?
Ms. Cleland, and then Mr. McDougall.
Yeah, so my inclination is to do it sooner than later, so that when that work session occurs, Planning Commission can also hear our thoughts as the 7 electeds trying to represent the community. To me, the comprehensive plan is really a statement on our values as a community moving forward for the next 20 years. So to articulate our concerns, our priorities, so that those are shared with not only council, but the public and planning commission, so that can be on their radar and the community's radar. We may be wrong on what direction we think we want to go, but if we don't at least get that information out, bounce it off of our consultants who are the experts in the field, and then have that initial conversation, I think that really, I would think would assist Planning Commission and the public with how they go about doing the updates for each section of the comprehensive plan. So that would be my inclination, is probably to do it after the June 5th meeting, but before the work sessions get serious with Planning Commission, so that we're as effective as possible.
Okay, I still don't have a specific date. I've heard many times from council that it needs to be the most effective date possible, but I need a little more to work with.
Mayor Miller.
Miss Kubik.
Sometime in October before the generalized open public house. If the open public house is in the second half of October, and the workshop with the consultants and city council is in the first part of October, before you hit November, December holiday season and after school starts.
Mr. Fantini, it's still your motion, so.
Mayor Miller, I would actually like to suggest maybe as soon as August, or even maybe a little bit sooner, only because I think that the sooner we can get that first feedback and then wrap our eyes around that. It looked like that second check-in might be a good spot in August. I don't know if that's too soon. Again, I have the least experience on this type of thing, but.
So I feel like council can provide this direction separately with enough time to come up with a date if we want to take, if you don't need to, I'm not trying to rush council into making a decision on a date. But, next council meeting, you certainly come back and provide that direction to staff in a formal resolution.
Mayor Miller.
Ms. Cleland.
So my understanding from our committee level discussion earlier today was that those check marks were to do a summary of what had happened already in Planning Commission. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, it would be the first meeting for Planning Commission, so it's 2 meetings a month. The first meeting, whatever section would be introduced, right? There would be a summary, and then you would come back and take public comment and kind of give, Planning Commission would give their feedback at the second meeting. Is that correct? Did I hear that correctly at our committee meeting?
So each of the elements, as we bring them to the Planning Commission, whether it's 2 at a time or 1 at a time, we'll have a regular meeting where it'll be a little less formal, and then a second meeting on that issue where we'll have a public hearing. After the public hearing, we'll bring it to the city council to report back and check in.
So if we waited till that second check mark, you would have already moved through possibly half of the project, or half of the elements. Is that correct?
Probably, yeah.
Apologies, Mr. McDougall. I said I would recognize you earlier, but
Oh, that's okay. I was going to suggest something like, let's put Q3 for now, and we knock out a date later, but, you know, it sounds like maybe there's interest in getting more targeted at this time anyway, so all good.
Mayor Miller.
Mr. Walters.
I think that this will be the 4th or 5th periodic update of a comprehensive plan I've gone through. So perhaps I am the most experienced on council, to contrast with Mr. Fantini, who's had quite a few good ideas here. I agree with Mr. McDougall, I think, that Q3 would probably be an appropriate time. But I wonder if Ms. Moulton or maybe Ms. Cleveland McGrath might more clearly articulate what it is we would hope to do in this work session with the consultant. I am certainly not opposed to getting the consultant available for any meeting at which we are talking about the comprehensive plan within the confines of their budget. But if we understood a little bit more about what the objective was of such a standalone meeting, I think it could help prescribe where it would most effectively go in the schedule.
Mayor Miller.
Ms. Moulton.
So I do like the Q3 idea, I will start by saying, and a way for us to work directly with the consultants and distill what we've already learned and help us to chart a path forward and ask really informed questions. We'll partly see the direction we're going, which will help us determine the direction we want to go. And that will give us an opportunity to have a council work session with consultant input that will benefit us and the plan going forward, in my
Mayor Miller?
opinion.
Mr. Fantini.
I would also like to just add that I'm very in favor of the work session because I like the opportunity where, you know, there's rules about what we can all talk about as a council separate from this. And so to your point, this gives us all an opportunity to sit together with the consultant and work together as a body of 7 with that consultant directly. So that's to me a very desired outcome as well.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Walters.
So I, again, think then the Q3 probably makes the most sense. Regardless of how many elements have made their way through the Planning Commission for an initial review and an initial public hearing, there will be the opportunity then to rewrite portions or change some things. But we'll also be far enough along, because we're not very far yet, right? And we're already at the beginning of June. So I think by Q3, and Q3 leaves us several months here for us to pick a date that makes sense, we'll be far enough along to be able to weigh in at an appropriate point. And then, you know, we can decide to have more check-ins and more work sessions and more meetings. But I would just say Q3 for now. Do we need to write that into this document? Because if so, I think staff could probably add it to the preliminary project schedule, the page right before this this page that's on the screen, and just say council workshop or work session, whatever, with the consultant Q3 2024.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Fantini.
I'd love to restate my motion.
Okay, let's try it again.
I think I'm
keeping track of it.
I would like to make a motion to adopt Resolution 3156 approving the public participation plan for the 2025-45 periodic comprehensive plan update with the inclusion of a council and consultant work session at a date in Q3 TBD.
Still second.
Okay. I know Mr. Franciak recorded this correctly, and we're recording the whole thing. So I've got a motion by Mr. Fantini and a second by Ms. Hubick to adopt Resolution 3156 with the amendment to include council and consultant meeting to be determined in Q3 of 2024, obviously. All right, any additional discussion? Please don't amend it anymore. I won't run out of ink. Kidding. Mr. Franciak, you take the vote, please.
Ms. Moulton.
Yes.
Mr. McDougall.
Yes.
Ms. Hubick.
Yes.
Mr. Fantini.
Yes.
Mr. Young.
Yes.
Mr. Walters.
Yes.
Ms. Cleveland McGrath.
Yes.
Motion carries.
As a good discussion, I think we all recognize how important it is to try to get this right and get the public involved. So with that, we'll no more business before the council. I'll adjourn tonight's meeting. Thank you.